A debate is underway to impeach the outgoing US President Donald Trump for inciting insurrection. And we just heard from Republican House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. They're speaking at the House meeting, echoing Liz Cheney. He said Trump summoned the mob. If this isn't an impeachable offense, I don't know what is. And I'm joined here in the studio by Doug Herbert, our US Affairs Specialist. Doug, Hoyer, they're using powerful but accurate language, wouldn't you say?
Well, he's basically saying what just about every single Democrat in the U.S. Congress thinks, and a growing chorus of Republicans. There are a few things for context, to take a step back just to sort of do a reality check of just how much this indicates the degree to which the ideological, the schism, the political landscape has shifted in, say, 46 years since Richard Nixon resigned as president before he could be impeached. In 1974, you had a bunch of Republican leaders of the Congress basically going to the White House, going to the Oval Office and saying to Richard Nixon, Mr. President, you no longer have the support of your party. Now, this is for offenses that a lot of people would say today are far pale in comparison to anything we saw last Wednesday at the Capitol in terms of when you talk about impeachable offenses. This was the Watergate scandal. Yes, until now, perhaps, a giant political scandal in American history, a watershed type of scandal. In that case, Republican leaders going to Richard Nixon, a man who I'm hardly going to be an apologist for. The guy was a crook and a liar, and saying, Mr. President, you no longer have the support of your caucus, your party in the United States Congress. We think that you should probably resign. Richard Nixon didn't think too much about it. He thought about it for several hours. He resigned before he could be impeached. Richard Nixon, a politician who until now has often been painted as one of the worst, the most corrupt, the most insidious president ever to occupy the Oval Office. This is a president who, when push came to shove and the writing was on the wall and own Republican leaders told him so, he ended up resigning. The other flip side of this equation is what I just said. Republicans went to the White House to tell him that he had no more support and should resign. It is a measure of the degree to which Donald Trump has taken hold of this party. We've often used the term taking the party hostage, turning it into a Trumpicized version of the Republican Party. It's a measure of it to see how many Republicans, even as we speak about the Republicans who, given this rampage in the Capitol, have crossed the aisle and joined the Democrats, how many are still no longer willing to do it? How many are still remain either so much enthralled or in fear of Donald Trump's base, of alienating that base, perhaps their eyes very, very firmly aimed on their own political futures, their own political horizon, and making this calculation, saying to themselves privately, what's worse? Abandoning Donald Trump right now, even if he incited a mob on the Capitol, and we see that in all of the images and all of the testimonials and all of the audio coming out, or sticking with Donald Trump and perhaps facing consequences as the days and weeks and months go by and more evidence, which it will, comes to light, showing just how complicit this president was and this president's immediate diehard supporters were in rallying this mob to the Capitol. And still that equation in the calculation of a lot of Republicans, they're still erring on the side of supporting Donald Trump, or at the very least, if they don't support what he did, not being willing to cross the aisle and move to impeach. It really shows the word to be used is perhaps the radicalization of the Republican Party over the years, a radicalization which you could trace the roots of it back to Ronald Reagan, back in the 80s. You could then go to Newt Gingrich and his supposed Tea Party revolution and the 1990s, and keep going forward. And in each incarnation, in each new phase of that Republican Party, you had a new wave of Republicans coming in who more and more, up until today, were radicalized to the point that you can argue that the party today, and this is in the view of many Republicans right now in the U.S., is more and more detached from reality, more and more living in their own cloistered disinformation or misinformation universe, and a lot of them doing so willfully and knowingly because they do not want to alienate Donald Trump's base, and they're still calculating that the 74 million people out there who voted for Donald Trump, despite how much his political capital, his political brand may have been depleted by the events of the past week, it's still potent enough to potentially affect their own political futures. They're saying it's not worth it for us to get off that fence, because you can make that argument, as a lot of people will, that this is the ultimate in impeachable offenses. If this isn't an impeachable offense, the logic goes, Liz Cheney saying it, a lot of other people, what is an impeachable offense? So really, as you watch this, keeping in mind the shifting political context, the shifted ideological context, it is in a it's really in a nutshell, a microcosm of where, and I will say, the Republican Party in America today stands with regards to acts that 20, 30, 40 years ago wouldn't have even been a question whether or not they were impeachable.